Hello and welcome to IMAGI-NATION TV, to our university special. My name's Jack, and 16 years ago I gathered with a few of my friends at university and we worked on whether we could build a bridge back to Australia's most marginalised kids, which is to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander kids. Now, I've been lucky enough to be Aboriginal myself. I've grown up with Aboriginal families from my mum's side and non-Aboriginal families from my dad's side. And because of my skin colour, I've been a bit of an undercover cop in my life. I've been able to be seen as white, and I haven't faced the prejudice that a lot of my family have faced who have black skin, including my grandfather, who went and fought in World War II for Australia and then came back and wasn't a citizen and faced apartheid conditions in this country. Because of that privilege of my life and because I could sit on the bridge between two worlds, I felt a responsibility to see if I could try and connect people together who have come from different walks of lives. And so that started with Indigenous and non-Indigenous Australians. And then over time, we've scaled that bridge building to be working in Uganda, in South Africa, in Nigeria, in Zimbabwe, in the United States, to work out how we could build engineering bridges of mentoring relationships between two of our educational spheres that often can see people shot out in different directions, either to a direction where you're going to struggle to be inside the margins or a direction where you're potentially going to have privilege and wealth and opportunity in your life. And those two institutions are secondary, high school and university. So that's been the architecture of our work. And then what's haunted me over the last 16 years is the more that we've been successful within different pockets is we've built this really beautiful little AIM world. And that wasn't kind of enough for me. The more that I worked on trying to be a mentor and a guide and a facilitator, I didn't feel comfortable saying to a group of school kids, hey, you know, you can get through school. Here's the tips. Here's how you can hack it. Here's how you can overcome your psychological trauma or the intergenerational challenges. Here's how you can work on organizing change. Here's how you can use imagination as a superpower. Here's how you can flip the script. Here's how we can reimagine economic models and think about kindness and exchange of knowledge alongside exchanges of dollars. Here's how we can build really beautiful, fairer communities. Now we do that, and then in 100,000 hours from now, we have irreversible climate change and we have water that's rising up over the edges of a number of our countries. I didn't feel like that was a very good long-sighted viewpoint for a mentor to pass on to kids. So we have set our course on saying, right, if we're going to be in for change in the world, we've got to be in for change in the whole world. It can't operate in isolation. It can't be just about bringing out a kid in one region or one town from inequity. We have to look at the ecosystem. And that's why we've launched IMAGI-NATION University, to give a stage for school students to go out and to get to work and to show they're not a problem to be fixed, but they're the solution, and give them the platform and the community and the village that will encourage them to go out and solve the problems for their people and for their world at large. For university students to organise and build bridges, to mobilise uni student mentors to go and work with marginalised high school kids. For teachers to teach with imagination, so we capture kids that are outside the margins and we be able to unlock their potential. For executives to level the playing field and set up a co-CEO model to bring a marginalised young person into the executive boardroom so we can get serious about representation, and then about how we work together with representation. And then for any citizen out there who is thinking, hey, I want to organise some change, because frankly, if ever we needed a wake-up call, this year has been one that says we have to do better. We have to be able to work out what individually we can all do to make sure that we leave this planet passing on to all children a better world. And I think that's what we're trying to build, a collective responsibility as we work with fashion, we work with arts, we work with media, and we work with people all around the world from different walks of life to all raise our hand a little bit and go, this will be my project for change for the next 10 months. So that's what we're up to. And we've just been doing these gnarly live streams where I've just been standing here and having in my garage and talking to people from all around the world for the last 7 or 8 days. So magical people from across the continent of Africa, from India, from Europe, from Australia, and all people who are saying, righto, let's try and get to work and work out how we can seriously change the way the world works. Here's a quick film that we've made to launch University, and we'll catch up with our first group of the panel for today's show on the other side.
We know what happened in 2020. So let's imagine 2021.
Let's imagine
what a free and just world looks like. Let's imagine
a university free for all,
with no paywalls to higher order thinking for anyone, anywhere.
Let's imagine
A social network for good.
A bridge for us to come together and redesign the way the world works.
Let's imagine what happens when we tell the kids at the back of the class,
We see you.
There is a generation of kids just like you.
Let's imagine school students, university students,
Teachers, executives, citizens.
coming together to work on a curriculum designed for a future that we hope to build. Now, imagine.
It's happening right here. And you're invited.
Welcome to Imagination University, brought to you by AIM, the Imagination Factory.
Applications are open now.
Trina, thank you for joining us on Imagination TV. I'd love to hear a little bit about your story and what sort of brought you into this broad orbit of Imagination University and the work we're looking to do.
Sure, thank you, Jack. My name is Trina, like you said, and I work in Mumbai in India. I run an organization called Kranti, which means revolution in Hindi. And we work with girls from Mumbai's red light areas, daughters of sex workers, survivors of sex trafficking, and we transform them into agents of social change. We believe these girls are the best equipped to be leaders who go back to their communities and solve many of the problems they grew up facing, because they have such a good understanding of these problems and they're so passionate about going back and improving their communities, that at Kranti we believe that if we can give them the right knowledge and the leadership skills, then this is the most sustainable way for us to build an equitable society where we're have these homegrown leaders from communities going back and working to improve them.
Yeah, it's that.
And the reason.
Oh, sorry, I was just going to jump in because it's such a big.
No, go on.
We often, I think a lot of human error comes out of sometimes the best intentions, especially when it comes to progress and help, the idea of help. And so traditionally you'll see a lot of nonprofits, a lot of groups. Like one of our most gnarly historical injustices was set up to try and protect children, where they literally took Aboriginal kids away from their families to try and breed out the black because they thought that it was a recessive gene. Now, the assumption which we can shatter, which is up here before we even act, is actually maybe these people aren't a problem to be fixed. We just haven't given them a stage yet. And if we can give them a stage, then hang on, we've got a game here. You don't have to do too much work after that. And it's challenging for the person who's going in, because you're effectively saying, actually, it's not me, it's not my ego, it's not me being the hero, it's you. And what's really challenging about this is the only way we're going to shatter the myths and stereotypes of the young people you're working with or young people we've worked with is when they shatter it themselves. That's the only time we're going to have case studies, and teachers will change their behavior and employers will change their behavior. And that's a complex thing to wrestle with, isn't it?
Absolutely, and agree with you on everything you've as complex as it is for us to change our perspective towards people who face marginalization. I think the best case scenario today is when we see someone who's faced any kind of marginalization. You know, it could be that they're living with a disability or whatever it is. The best case scenario is we think, what kind of services can we provide them? You know, so we see a person with disability and we think, okay, like, is this building accessible? How can we make sure this person has employment or education? But Kranti's vision for the world really is that, you know, when we see a person with disability, that our first thought should be, hey, this could be the person who solves many of the problems the community of people with disability face. You know, maybe this is the person who's going to come up with new technology or whatever it is, right? And that's the big mindset flip that Kranti is after, and that's how we think that the world is really going to change and become equitable.
Yeah, I think
When
because of
everyone,
we've got such a interesting intersection, which I'll bring in a couple of the other people that are on the panel now to have a bit of a chat about. But what I'm fascinated about with this experiment is, after working through a number of different contexts, a number of different geographies, a number of different kids, a number of different scenarios, that we worked out our superpower is actually going to be cultivating a complex network of people and building bridges between them. And what I'm really interested in is, one, we've got some tools we can teach, like we're pretty good at imagination, mentoring, flipping the script, building bridges. We've got this idea of hoodie economics, which is a different economic model. And so giving tools to young people, perhaps like the students and young people that you're working with, and go, hey, you can be an imagination ambassador at Imagination Uni and we can share our resources together. But as exciting as those actual learnings will be when that young person in Mumbai says, hey, I want to start this project, and we've got 20 billionaires that are sitting in the network that can go, yeah, I can help with that. Or someone else who, like Sam, who works in fashion, when we're talking about unlikely alliances and how ideas are started, man, I believe the best stuff, like the really unique stuff, is when you go, all right, how do we put A with Z with a letter that hasn't been invented yet? Then you get close to an original idea. So that's what I'm interested in, sort of seeing, Sam, as we bring lots of different people to the table. And as you're sort of listening in, what's sort of piquing your interest or grabbing you? And tell us a little bit about your story just quickly.
Cheers, Jack. So I'm Sam Moore. I'm originally from New Zealand, actually. I've been over in Australia for 12 years and have always been in the fashion business as such. I've owned a couple of brands in my time, one being Dead Studios, which I moved on from a couple of years ago and sold. And my newest one is Pyra. And Pyra is a technical streetwear brand built for the elements. It's men's and women's wear. And our main mission with Pyra is to inspire people to get back outdoors into the elements. We live in a world at the moment where everyone is so connected via social media, and, even more so with these lockdowns. For Pyra, we really want to be able to create amazing content, have product that is built for the elements and multi-purpose and to be used outdoor, but with the ultimate mission of just inspiring people to get back outdoors and being active.
Yeah, awesome. And I wonder if part of this, like if you end up enrolling in the university, if we could push that design to like one extra level experiment, which is be active for what amount of social good with X garment, and let's see what that can do. And Jace, you set off on an adventure in the outdoors, which has led to you being very active in trying to create social good. Tell us a little bit about that bridge and what you're seeing from Imagination Uni and what might be interesting for you in it.
Sure. Who knew when I was trekking around at 80 degrees south in Antarctica that I'd end up chatting to you about imagination, Jack? It's been quite a journey, but the important thing is, I think, is to look at things that can be improved. And when we talk about imagination, I often think about reimagination, because imagination is a fantastic state we have when we're younger, and somehow the education system knocks it out of us. So I'm really excited about our partnership we've got going already, taking Imagination TV into the classroom and helping kids, giving them the tools to reimagine, to reactivate, to recreate, and have a look about where they sit in the world. So that's just an endless level of interest to me, because there are so many better ways, and unfortunately our system works against that. And I'm just rapt to be working with people at our place and also through the Imagination University as to way we can re-engender that imagination and think of the world we want to create rather than the world we're inheriting. So I'm really big on utilising those thinking processes.
And Liz, like look, I believe that I don't think we're going to pull down every school wall in the world. I don't think we're going to pull down every university wall that's established. I don't think we're going to pull down every corporation wall. So when I've sat in enough, and maybe at times too many, want to change the world conferences and being a part of leadership groups at different stages, and sometimes the alarming statement, which I find challenging from a designer's perspective, is we need to just change the whole system, which always gets a big round of applause. But changing the system, I think, can sometimes be as little as, hey, let's talk about this word for 5 minutes in class, 1 day a week. And that's it. And we can still teach everything else we've got. And suddenly we added just one word that was silent into the visibility, or we talked about one blind spot, and we might be able to open up a whole neural pathway in our mind and a whole new set of journeys. As you think about working on change with people, how do you wrestle with wanting to see big change and sometimes just doing the little tweaks which actually can create that big change?
Yeah, I think that's a really great insight, Jack, to the challenges about what you're doing and your grand ambition. I'm very excited by the whole concept of Imagination University, just because of the power of pulling people together and asking them to think and work in new ways, and the opportunity to build collaborations which leverage different expertise to unlock the sort of conversations that you're talking about. So the Menzies Foundation is really excited about coming on board as one of your executive members. And our aim is to to bring expertise, to bring different perspectives, and to connect, or to build a connection with people, to have the sort of conversations that you're talking about that can be life-changing. I think sometimes the danger in this work is we all start off wanting it to be too big. And as you say, starting somewhere, being purposeful, ensuring that you're really, connecting into what you're doing and what you're learning on the way, often provides the platform for bigger and grander ambitions over the course of time.
And knowing when to just get out of the way of yourself, like you kind of, I think, there's lots of people that want to do good things. We've just got to work out how to organize ourselves so we can do that in a way that's productive and helpful, not that we stumble across each other trying to get resources or do X, Y, Z along the way. Trina, what are some of the challenges you're looking at, and how do you think about working in partnership sideways with other organizations, people, to really try and see a system-wide change? Because I'd imagine that's part of what you're working towards, is you want to see things change, you want to see them change for good.
Yeah. And so we really want to piggyback off the great work that a lot of organizations are doing with marginalized young people. And Jack, you talked about some of them. And so I think there are organizations that, have shelter, like safe homes for young people. There are organizations that are working on mainstream education. But I think the one big missing piece is what Imagination University does. And I think what we do at Kranti, which is building critical thinking, creative problem solving, leadership, all of these skills in young people so they can really be leaders who solve problems in their communities. And so we want to take our essentially change-making curriculum and layer it into the work of existing organizations. So not replicate anything they're doing, but layer our change maker curriculum with what they're already doing, and have all the young people in other organizations also transform into leaders who go back and bring change in their communities. And I think the Imagination University Network is going to be really powerful in helping us do that.
It's I've been fascinated over time as we sort of scale to different spots about what a legacy looks like, or what do you leave behind in life. And I love history, and I study both modern history, ancient history, and like some different streams in different places. We study texts like Aristotle, Plato, and Socrates have been reasonably big influences on the way I've thought about a number of different things. And we're talking like a couple thousand plus years ago. So the work that we're doing today might not be picked up or have like takeoff value for 2,000 years. And so I started saying to our team, let's just leave tools behind. At the best, if we can just put into books and into resources and into films, digestible tools that someone somewhere at some time can pick up, then that will be a huge thing to leave for the world. And if we can bring the collective intelligence and insight from all of us to go to Jason's point, to really try and crack the code on what is imagination, if we can make that a tangible set of tools that can be taught by people in lots of different places, to make mentoring something that people can do, to make building bridges, you know, when we talk about the second wave of Black Lives Matter, like we've got some complications and challenges around how we have dialogue with people who are different. So if we can create some tools together with good insight around it, that alone will be a gift. And I don't know, I think it might have the potential to do some really significant good. We might get thousands of people enrolling and we might be able to scale this thing up really quickly. But I reckon I've learned over time, don't chase the number, don't chase the outcome, have your goals, do your strategy plan because you still need it, but try and let the work be enough. And I think, Sam, when I see garments that I love, it's a piece of art and I can feel the sweat, the blood, the tears, the creation that has gone into that thing. And I want to keep it. You know, it's not fast fashion. It's something that stands out. And I think that's the job of artists and creators and designers for all of us, to try and create a tool or something that really lasts. Is that sort of, yeah, what do you think about that? There's just a couple of thoughts.
Yeah, 100%. And look, you know, as I've got older as well, I've kind of taken to more consideration about what my impact on the environment is. And, you know, the fashion industry is one of the biggest and worst for environmental impact. So, you know, with Pyra, you know, us wanting to have a link between the outdoors, it was important that we were responsible on our output in terms of what our garments are made of. So we do use organic cottons, which does help with less pesticides. We use Eco-Neil, which is our windbreakers all made from recycled plastics and old carpets. You know, our women's activewear tights is all made from Clavico as well, which is again recycled plastic. So just taking that kind of level of thought into the garments that we're putting out into the environment is a right step in the right direction.
Taking thought is such a cool phrase, because economically, yes, I had a $50 note sitting down here. Like, we kind of think this $50 exchange, but what we're not measuring is the amount of thought, the amount of love, the amount of thinking, the amount of design, the amount of history, the amount of experimentation, the amount of failure, all to create that thing in that moment for someone, the amount of thinking around the storytelling. And the more that you put into, the more life you can put into anything, I think on the other side, the more that people can respond. And we're fascinated, and we're about to run out a bit of time, but exploring different economic modeling around how do we value exchange. And I think, Jason, Liz, I'll just open this up to you two to finish us up. I think we don't quite have the code cracked yet. We've got cash probably a little bit too far to the front. And I think we're missing knowledge exchange. I think we're missing kindness. I think we're missing some things that we could value economically that could actually allow us to have more of this sustainable world that we're working towards. So one of our professors is working on hoodie economics to explore that in parallel as we go through the piece. Do you two think we've got the economic modeling right? And do you see a way that we can start to shift that or explore different models?
I'll jump in while Liz is on mute. I think it's a bit like, you know, the footy coach who talks about when you haven't got the ball, even the best player, the most creative player on the team might only have the ball for 3 or 4% of the entire match. What are you doing with the rest of the time? It's the build-up, it's the encouragement, it's the placement of your team members, it's being creative, it's being in the right place and sending signals. So I think it's really important that apart from that transaction, you know, that $50 note swapping hands, it's all the thought and planning and design and creativity and why you actually got to that point of transaction in the first place. And then what happens beyond that? The transaction is the thing we all recognize, but there's so much going on behind the scenes. So my view is that how we can reimagine and create all those different elements, because when all those different elements add up, it adds so much more meaning and relevance to the actual transaction that people actually know why they're transacting, they know where the benefit's going. And I think that's a really important way to look at things.
And then just to add to what Jason said, I think the other thing is too, is so often economics is a reflection of the silos. And what we need to do is we need to break down those silos, learn to deeply listen and connect with people to truly understand their stories and the narrative, to find new ways of being together. And I think that's, Jack, once again, I think Imagination University offers a great opportunity to really think about how we deeply connect, to share experience and insight, learn more about each other as a way of mapping out then what a shared future might look like.
And that's what's another thing that's haunted me being a student in communications. I did media and communications at university and sketched the idea of AIM the same year that Zuckerberg sketched Facebook. And since then I've seen YouTube and all of the others roll through, we have just lost the grey space. And when I look at young people who walk around with their head down and their phone up, we are really in a dangerous space for complex human communication and complex verbal human communication. And I think that's one thing that we're going to try and fight for. We might not pull it all off, but I think it's worth the fight, because we have to have space to debate, to understand, to be wrong, to be right. And if anyone thinks they know everything or comes up with a billboard set of statements around how the world's going to work, then you know that that's flawed and dangerous. So complexity, I think, is helpful for all of us. Hey, I could talk to you all day. Sam, Trina, Jace, Liz, thanks for joining us and being a part of this. And we're really excited to see what we can explore together over the next few months before we open up Imagination University officially in February next year to really see what we can do. So thanks so much for dropping in.
Thanks, Jack.
Yeah, great work.
Oh, good. We're going to go back in time for those of you that are tuning in wondering who the heck we are and whether we have any credibility to open our own university. So we've been going for 16 years. We've been working on ideas for 16 years. We've been practically creating change and shifting landscapes around inequality. And we thought it was time to get out of our own way and take this 16-year case study and to share those tools with the world. So this is a bit of the history of AIM. It's a short film that we pulled together. It takes us up to last year when we ran a small festival in Australia to bring some people in from around the world to learn about the model. And it sort of is, a bit of a background to hopefully show that we're a bit legit. Opportunities are there, and we're just there to help you.
$50 and you have to wear your budgie smugglers.
National Hoodie Day is a chance to look good and do good. That next year we're going to run a global campaign to give away 20 golden tickets to 20 university students from 20 different countries to win a one-off scholarship for 3 years to see if they can take our model and rip a generation of powerless people out of inequality. Not only are we going to nail this back home, but we're going to turn our eyes to every kid that's been left behind and see if we can build a better, fairer world for us all. That starts tonight. Get ready for the next 10 years. You ain't seen nothing yet.
You. Sitting in the back row with the fire inside, we see you. You who has fought for everything, we see you. You who knows what it is to rebel, we see you. There is a generation of kids, just like you, waiting for you to see them. So if not you, then who? If not now, then when?
Shalon, thank you for joining us on Imagination TV on our university special. It's nice to see you again. Just wondering what sort of intrigued you about this, and tell us a bit about your context and what you're working on.
Sure. Yeah, thanks so much. I think one of the things that intrigues me the most is a through line that you've been working on for a long time, and that is just how do we see and notice the potential in kids all around the world and give them a stage to tell their story and to develop and grow. And so I founded a nonprofit that's aiming to do precisely that. And it's called Hello World. And when you were describing sort of networks and sort of network entrepreneurship, that's sort of at the heart of everything we do. We're really trying to look for organizations that do an amazing job mentoring youth and help them scale their impact 100-fold, and then help kids to grow and develop in new and imaginative ways. So
now, from memory, you have I think an adequate vision, which is other people would probably describe as ambitious. But I was reflecting yesterday that if anyone else tells me that a dream I have is ambitious, I'm going to want to punch myself in the head, because I think dreams definitively have to be ambitious. Otherwise, what's the point? It's like a digestive biscuit. You're like, oh, that was easy to drink and eat. What are you working on? What's the sort of vision that you're trying to bring to life with Hello World?
yeah, so we want to help 1 billion young people discover and develop their potential. And we're hoping that in the next 3 years, we'll help 1 million to accomplish that goal. So.
Awesome. Yeah, I think one of the things which is could be a fascinating overlap, perhaps, which we can talk to outside of this, but working out how do we give potentially some of those young people having that opportunity the chance to have a pathway into Imagination University. And we've been reflecting on that in terms of the ecosystem. And Auntie Brian, it's great to see you to think about, I think there's so much duplication, and we've really been trying to work out where do we fit, in the space of this battle against inequity, and specifically education inequity. And in Australia and at large in a number of countries around the world, there's already been established for quite some time, for almost a generation or so, as we've made our way out of different civil rights movements, college scholarships for kids who are coming out of marginalised background has kind of been established as something that is one way that you can take one student out and build exceptional pathways. What I think, Auntie Bron, our greatest asset is to come into the university sector at large, to work with groups like Career Trackers in Australia, to work with the Obama Foundation, to work with other scholarship providers in the continent of Africa, across Southeast Asia, and say, you're already making the investment. You're already helping someone cover their degree, giving them accommodation, giving them an allowance, and do what the guys did to me, which is challenge me as a university student on a scholarship. So, well, what are you going to do? And if we can then activate one of those students every single year on every single campus, to then go and work with 100 high school kids like them, to mentor them, to build that ecosystem as part of the scholarship, we can bring the design, the community, the support, the network, and instead of duplicating with us and trying to go and get all the extra wealth to have another set of scholarships, let's work with this infrastructure of marginalized kids who are sitting there, who have been given opportunities for the first time in a generation. And let's say, hey, that comes with a cost, which means you got to serve. You got to go back and make sure you bring 100 kids with you, because there's generations before that missed out, and that's why you're getting that opportunity. So that's what I'm kind of interested in, Auntie Bron. I feel like hopefully we've found places to where we should stop and where we can then work within the network. And it's good to see. I'd love to just get a couple of thoughts as to how you're going, what you think about what we're up to.
Yeah, I mean, we're building scholarships because I don't think there's enough. And I constantly think too, in terms of what you're saying, what will it be to be Indigenous? And I think about in the future, and I think about the words of Professor Aileen Morton Robinson, and some people may know her. She's a Quandamooka woman from Stradbroke Island. And she talked to me when I was in my late teens, early 20s, about what would it be to be Indigenous in 100 years' time. And so what is the role for us as Indigenous people, or indeed for the non-Indigenous people? What will it be like, and what is our role, and what are young people's role, and what are students' role in shaping that, as that's different from now, and what's our role in terms of universities in doing that? So it's more than just coming in. I think of the words of Martin Nakata, Torres Strait Islander, who says it's also about knowing your knowledge, not just regurgitating it, not just thinking about it and going through the motions, but being able to talk back to it, knowing it inside out and upside down, to know what's wrong with it and how we change it. Because some of the things we want to change, or people may wish to change, is also about laws or things that are in place that you go, we got to smash them, but having the arguments of why they don't work and what would work better.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
gearing up people with confidence, you know, growing the confidence and instilling in everyone's got the ability, but how do we harness that to push that out, kind of to push those ceilings up, to say you can do it. It's just about figuring out how to, and knowing all the things you know now. How do you do that to help your mob, your group, your community, where you're from, push out of that to bring about change?
And I think,
and I really think too, you know, we've got to start thinking in terms of what will it be to be Indigenous, what will it be to be non-Indigenous in Australia, or indeed anywhere in the world, and what kind of world do we want to shape? And we all have a role to play in that. And those that come to uni, or whether people are at TAFE or school, what are the things you want to seek out to make happen in terms of the future?
Yeah, the one of the thread lines which have been fascinating over the last sort of week or so, I've been talking about this idea with different people is what I think Trina's talked to a little bit today, and what Shalon is the heart of your design, which I like. It gives space for kids to do the work. And so the challenge, I think, which I really want to make sure part of the work that we do in Australia is to, and globally, is to challenge people coming out of marginalized backgrounds to say, yes, you are going to get your university degree. You're at a university campus, when we talk specifically about the AIM student chapters on campus. So interrogate, as you said, Annie Bron, the disciplines and knowledge, and learn, be as smart as you possibly can in this world. Now, I want to give you a superpower, which is how to practically go out and be an organizer of change. I want to teach you rejection. I want to teach you what it's like to try and convince in negotiation a principal. I want to teach you what it's like to try and convince a privileged college kid who up until that point had always thought a certain way about Black people and had racist sort of underpinnings to that thinking. And I want to let you see and learn from what Obama did in his 20s for what Jacinta Ardern did in her 20s. And it was everything that's taught me to be able to be a CEO, was that hustle on the university campus, trying to convince a kid to change their behavior, trying to convince a university student to change their behavior. And if we can balance that, so we don't just end up with a generation of people that are theoretically good in a Western world, but actually can have the organizing grit to go, actually, I know how to, no one can stop me. I can create my own thing. I know all these tools now. If it don't work here, then I've got power and agency. And that's what I'm fascinated in as well. Emily, I think we've got you there as well. I'd love to bring you in and just reflect a little bit on your story and what's interesting you in Imagination University. So thanks for joining us. We might not have you. Yep, we got you.
Hi, I'm sorry I missed that question.
Oh, good. I was just saying, I'd love to hear a bit about your story and what's landed you into this stratosphere.
Oh, yeah. I just saw the amount of waste just from working in the fashion industry for quite some time, and also just reevaluating my shopping habits. And I had a wardrobe bursting full of fast fashion, still with tags on, I wasn't wearing. So I understood my part in it. But also I realized that more had to be done. And that's why I started Eco Love, basically just selling at markets. And then everyone's like, do you have an online store? And then that escalated to now what we have, a boutique. And the reason I chose this boutique is we have a space where we can create events. And it's all about engaging the community and giving them practical tools that they can take home, how they can be more sustainable with their shopping habits. So at the moment, we're working with Wallara Council, our local government, and they're supporting us on a series of projects. We've got 2 workshops. The final one is this Sunday, where we're empowering our community on how to mend your clothing, how to upcycle, restyle your wardrobe, and give them the tools that they need. It's not enough to just show them that fast fashion is unsustainable. We have an art display outside which shows the scope of that consumption. So Aussie women on average consume about 27 kilos of textile waste every year, and they throw away 23 kilos of that. So we have an art installation that shows 23 kilos of textile waste at the front of our store. And this is to really start that conversation around sustainable fashion and really engage our community into that.
Yeah, really cool. We've had lots of people, especially young people, particularly who are who are coming to us and saying, I want to work on a project for change. I want to be able to engage in this way or that way. And a lot of it's around sustainability and climate change and what to do. And that I just keep being reminded of how there's sometimes the smallest tweaks in our local communities and our local councils can then be replicated by other people, and we can change. You know, when people say the system, we are part of that. Like, it's sort of us in the system. Well,
100%.
yeah. Hey, Arnie Bron, before I come back to you, Shalon, I'd love to know how you've maintained positivity and hope in trying to push for progress and often creating progress yourself. Like, you've been on the front line often and really sort of pushing the dial, and often in quite challenging environments. How do you stay hopeful? And for our young organisers who want to sustain a life of creating change, how the heck do you do it? How do you be happy and hopeful in the process?
Because I always think of the young people that are coming after me. You know, that's one of my motivators, is around the ones that were before me. What did they endure for me to have what I have now? To grow up in a government house with not much and a little state school, and have the statistics already kind of grounded of what was going to happen. I was going to work in a shop or a factory or in jail, be in jail. And some of my family members are in those situations, but how do you shape that in your own head? But I also think for young people coming up, what do I think for hope for them, and try to enable for them to make it better than what I have, and the same as the ones before me. So, you know, some people say, oh, that you shouldn't have hope, but I do have hope. And I also, you know, turn words back on people too. So that I play with some people's words, and you might think that's strange, but I hear terms like, oh, you know, Australia's the greatest or whatever. So, well, it can only be that if you think about Indigenous people too. Like, you can't keep excluding us. So try to get people, I try to rally other people into the cause. And that's about, I think, I heard someone else mention that, one of the other speakers. You know, to me, it's about working with others and building bridges, because you can't do it all on your own, Jack. You know, and listeners can't do it all. Listeners, you can't do it all on your own. We can try to motivate ourselves, but having others to come together as the collective is a motivator as well.
And that I love IKEA as a design, and the story which I've found or studied with IKEA was that it was this person looking to start it who didn't necessarily have the friendliest relationships with a number of people who, when it came to furniture and design, so he couldn't get the manufacturing license. He could get the supply license, but he couldn't actually get the manufacturing license for creating furniture. So he just said, okay, well, I'll let people put it together themselves.
Yeah.
And when we create that moment where we take a big leap and we let ourselves be exposed and we trust other people to come to the table, yes, we'll be disappointed by some, but my gosh, unlocking that potential of what can happen is such a rich moment, which I think, Shalon, you're doing bravely with the design, and I urge you to, you know, keep sticking to expecting the best from people and seeing what's possible, because I think that's how we get to move this energetic current of progress and positivity as we keep moving.
Yeah, I so agree. And also, it's connecting people's stories to each other. There's so much inspiration out there. Like for me, a daily practice is just watching the videos from the kids on our platform from all around the world, and their ideas and what they're doing and what they're grappling with and the challenges that they're willing to take on, and their authenticity. And so I think I'm endlessly inspired by that. I've yet to have a day where that doesn't fuel me.
Yeah, what you eat. Taika Waititi, who's a filmmaker who we interviewed for AIM TV a few years ago in Los Angeles, he said, you know, read books, read books, read books, read books, read books, read books, and sort of thinking about what do we digest. And another person who's very sage media person in Australia said to me, look, there's about 24 or 24.5 million people who you'll never hear in the media.
Yeah.
And sort of thinking about the voices that we do hear and what we digest and how that works. Shalon, Annie, Bron, Emily, thank you so much for dropping in. Really excited to see what we can work together on. I think there's three huge levers that, with some interesting design around mobilising 1 billion young people around the world, around working with the university sector to activate people as they go through that degree in parallel. And then Emily taking the case study of what you're working on and hopefully opening you up to a network of people that can help amplify that and copy. I think we can in the isolation alone in this 15 minutes, maybe do a lot of good in the next 12 months. So thank you all for dropping in.
Thank you.
Bye.
Oh, good. See you, gang. All right, we're going to catch up with a couple of cool cats on the other side, and we've got a video that we made with a French dude who won the Oscar one day. His name's Lawrence Witz, and he won the Oscar for the best animated short. And we made this film to talk about trying to work out how we can get off these established tracks that we're on and how we can maybe jump off them sometimes, grab the hand of someone else and see if we can design some new networks and some new tracks. And that if we want to change the world, we have to change the way it works. So check it out, and we'll be back on the other side.
ticking clock to cure pain. Every second means a mile. Every minute means a day. I hope you're walking in the sun. Hope you're going to be someone. Maybe one day, maybe today.
Sienna, what's happening? It's good to see you. I've got a very, very simple question for you.
Hi.
How are you?
Great. I'm feeling really good.
Hey, what's imagination?
For me, imagination, you know, everyone sees the world with different eyes in the different ways that they've grown up. We all have different experiences. We all have different family structures, all different places that we live in. And those are our realities. And this creates, this gives us a way to imagine the things that we don't see in our realities. And it's the pictures and the concepts that we see in our minds, you know, that we have in our own minds. Everyone has different imaginations for the different realities that they could bring.
Do you think there is one reality that all of our different imaginations are making their way into?
Well, hopefully everyone who has good morals have a perfect imagination and a picture of what could become. Everyone who wants the same for each of us. We all have that destination that we all want to get to, where we all have the right to imagine what we need for ourselves and our communities.
It's now it starts to get complex, the dance, doesn't it? Because what's good morals?
Exactly.
And then what's a perfect imagination? Like then I think this is where because I really agree with you. I think I think imagination is the beginning of human thought. I think it's actually the muscle somewhere that we can we can think a thought, and then I think it's a bridge into empathy to then understand another thought, and then maybe just the reality is a collection of the thoughts and actions. But often we measure the reality on the actions, but we haven't thought about the thoughts. What do you think of that, Ty?
Yeah, that's a nice, easy question to start Sienna off with. Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think imagination is the core to starting everything. It's the core to creating everything, and if anything, it's the seed that lights what the future will be. I don't know, for me personally, with filmmaking and coming from a creative sense, like that's you rely on imagination solely to create that, and I guess that's what life is, isn't it? It's creating something from nothing.
Well, what's wacky is that you work in the entertainment industry and you use imagination, which Sienna has just said, maybe it's a big, like, it's what we all have to access thinking around. I wonder what happened somewhere, and I don't know if it was by design, and if it was by design, I wonder why we have cordoned off imagination for entertainers and kids if it has all of this worth for us. That confuses me.
Yeah, it's a weird pocket that it's only sits in that world, or that's an acceptable kind of way for people to have imagination. When you're a child, it can be endless. You have a free right to run your imagination wild, and you can do crazy things and dream crazy things, and it's wildly acceptable. And I guess that goes as well in the entertainment profession. But I think the thing that we've lost along the way is that everyone has this imagination, regardless of whether you decide to explore it or not. It's there, it's inherent, and it's such a huge part of what makes us who we are. So I think tapping back into that, yeah.
I was just going to jump in and say, Sienna, I think that's part of, like, it's a theory. We're going to find out. We're going to try and put it into practice with Imagination University. And we've been trying to do it in different ways since the beginning of AIM, is just kind of, how do you talk about, I might have a certain view on a good moral life. I think it involves caring about people. I think it involves caring about the environment. I think kindness is a part of it. I think working out how you share knowledge that you've got is a part of it. I have a sort of moral code which I've developed. Now, there can be someone who might make a lot of money and live in a home which is worth $10 million and look after their family, 5 people, 10 people, 20 people, and they might think they're living a good moral life. And I think part of our challenge as human beings is to have this thread line, like those old sort of telephones with, like, a can and a piece of string.
Yeah.
That thread line of imagination, so we can try and understand each other, because I think there can be challenges in the way that we live. And unless we can understand each other, and then sometimes people are going to live the way we don't want them to live. So that becomes hard as well, because we've then got to work out how we live together. There's a collection of thoughts. Over to you.
Oh, sorry. I was thinking about the Imagination University and what it means, what it would look like, what I think, these pockets of knowledge look like. In my community, for Yolngu people, this knowledge has been passed on for 60,000 years, and it has created a world that we've been able to sustain for 60,000 years. And it holds the knowledge that has been from the beginning of the world. And it's only in the past 300 years that our environment as we see it is crumbling slowly, because we've had a lack of connection, or it's been solely focused on the money and how we're going to get that. But for younger people, we're just living every day. Everyone's connected. We all are equal, and we are all sharing knowledge and learning from each other, learning from our elders about the land, and the instructions in the songlines in the language that have shown us the way to care for the land, and which has sustained it for this long.
And that just makes too much sense to me. I'm just like, oh yeah, of course. The old person passes you on knowledge, and then you pass on the next person, and then the knowledge is then shared with each other. And then the knowledge is also not just about like me, it's kind of, oh yeah, those animals and stars and the water and everything's kind of connected. So let's just make sure we kind of factor that into play. And
exactly,
that's the part which I think, like, reflecting on the challenges with the climate and the time pressure we're under to try and turn things around. And I don't think we're going to get rid of money. I think there is a way that we can build some sense of satisfaction, worth a moral life into our ways of how we, I think broadly, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people have had economies of exchange since the beginning. So I think an economy is just how we exchange knowledge, ideas, exactly the things you're talking about, and working.
Not even economies, everyone deserves food, everyone deserves to eat, everyone deserves the shelter, everyone deserves the water, and that's how it's going to be. It doesn't matter if I work harder than the man down the street. He deserves to live, and that's how we're going to do it. So we all have to work together to make sure that we all have the essential things needed for life, which is how Yolngu people have lived and how we've sustained that whole thing for this long.
And I reckon a frame where, I might be wrong, but I think that at a base level, an economy is how people interact. And so that's it. That's just like, well, this is what we do. This is how we interact, how we exchange with each other, and how we see value in each other, what's valuable. And what's valuable is that the man down the street who might not work as hard, I'm still going to gather him because us is valuable. And I think, Tayo, that's part of our genuine challenge here, is to work out how we bring value to the things that may not be valued, because there's some time pressure now, which we haven't really had visibility around until this generation, around climate challenges. There's some time pressure around inequity. There's some time pressure around food and how we share it. There's some time pressure around the amount of clothing that's going into the ground. And as water's rising and the world is shifting in front of our eyes, if ever we needed motivation to try and do something a little bit different, or to at least act and try, surely this is the time to be really buoyed with hope and to go for some things, to learn from all of these ecosystems, to learn from communities and cultures like Sienna's been reflecting on, and to design with intelligence from everything that's happened, try and gather as much as we can, put it together, then get to work, and hopefully we've got a sweet world in the next 10 plus years.
Yeah, I think so. And there's definitely a few moving pieces in the world at the moment. But I think what you said before is right as well, Jacko. We're not going to get rid of money, but it's about finding these ways around it and finding these bridges to it. I think that's what the beauty of this university is that it's free. What Sienna was saying before, 60,000 years worth of knowledge and history that it wasn't passed down through family. You didn't pay for that. You know what I mean? It's not something anyone was expected to pay. And I think that's what education's become such a thing of obviously making money, but and learning as well. But once you take that factor out, that elitist, I guess the privilege of it, and just you open it up to be able to share that knowledge, that conversation, then just in doing that, you open up the doors to all these other trains of thought, all these other people that can then jump on board as well. With
we also, the gnarly part, I reckon, is like, we are part of the system. We are in an economy, either our local economy, like my neighbors, or, you know, the people that I know, or the state, or the country, or the world that you live within. We can actually change what we value. So when we started working with kids in high school, often these kids were told, you're disadvantaged, at the extreme, you're dumb, you don't have value in school, you don't fit here. And I was sitting here talking to these kids who had more like street nous than anybody, who had all of this knowledge outside of school, which were like so much more mature than any other 12-year-old I'd worked with, and going, this just isn't valued. And if we can value that, then that's as simple as like one person giving a different report card to go, we value your knowledge outside of these areas. Here you go. You have worth. Like, those mirroring systems don't cost money. Those mirroring systems are simply attitudinal changes to what knowledge we value, what worth people have, and especially when that worth is outside of an established sort of mainstream system. And that just requires a bit of a quantum leap from some designers who are working on education, who are working on some, there's not even a quantum leap. It's just like, oh, just 12-year-olds actually really smart in a number of different areas. It's just not necessarily in rote learning mathematics, but heck, look at all of this other human potential. So we don't lose human potential generation after generation. Sienna, have you had to think about, like, one of the things I'm pumped about is finally, I think we can give tools to teachers in remote communities to take what we've done. I think we can give the opportunity for kids to be entrepreneurs, to do exactly what we're talking about in remote communities as well in Australia and also globally. Have you, as you've sort of had to think about Imagination University, is there anything that you're thinking about that you'd love to get involved with?
Well, I think what for me is that it's that passing on of knowledge, and the way that young people do it. It's just in everything that we do every day. You grow up learning from your grandmothers and your mothers about the ways to do things. And for people who may not have that family structure, you know, I'm about to go into university next year away from home, Brisbane, and I'm not going to have that family support. But I hope to find, you know, there are places where this knowledge and this family connection sits, where this knowledge is being shared and cherished and valuing each other, which is what I think is important.
Yeah, absolutely. It was, you know, when we were at Sydney Uni 16 years ago, in the Koori Centre with all these Indigenous students from around the country, and we just kind of got together with some other university students from different backgrounds, and we built that little community in that village. And we went down to a local high school and said, here's what we know, like, we're still kind of young, but then here's what other people have told us, and passed it on. I think you're going to UQ, is that right?
QUT. Yeah.
So I think we're having some conversation with QUT as well, and we'd love for you to apply to potentially run one of those student chapters, and that'd be, you know, exciting and inspiring. And I also, like, I've got the privilege to work with a lot of young people. I'm 35, so maybe I'm on the way out of anywhere near young now. One of them, Brianne Miller, who was, I think you know Ree, and you know, Ree was started the program and is now the associate designer working alongside me. She's 23, I think. Sorry, Ree, if I got your age wrong. But being able to just say to Rianne as a 19-year-old, 18-year-old, you're not too young to lead. Learn these tools. Like, you can hustle in these spaces. If you can hustle in Brisbane, you can learn some of the things that, you know, I know that some of your family members have gone to cities and learned a lot of different things, and then use that to help shift the country and help shift the way that we think about Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. So yeah, pumped to see what we might be able to do together next year, and just know that we're on your team. So thanks for dropping in to be a part of this conversation.
Definitely. Thank you.
Pleasure. And Tayo, thanks for dropping in. Hope you get some sleep. Congratulations on the young stuff. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, guys.
All right, we're going to go and catch up with, speaking of climate and the challenges we've got, one of our esteemed professors, Professor Lionel Corn, is outside and he's got Lionel's climate class. So we'll just throw to you, Lionel, and then we'll be back on the other side.
During this year's fire season, around 110,000 square kilometres of bush, forest and parks across Australia burned. That's the size of Switzerland, Jamaica, Taiwan, Israel, Singapore and Norfolk Island put together. Which sounds like a fun country. Scientists recently said climate change increased the risk of these fires by at least 30%. I'd planned to ask some of the local animals what they think of climate change, but unfortunately 3 billion of them died in the fires, so there's no one left to ask.
Nick, nice to see you, man. Thanks for dropping in. Love to just know what what you're thinking about with Imagination University, and tell us a little bit about your story. You know, you're one of those students at university that I was studying with, and was lucky enough to, over time, we've had a lot of dialogue about how we give privilege a purpose and how we get to work on that. And it's one of the exciting things for me is catching up with someone like you 16 years on to continually think about what we can do, because we're around for a pretty long time, reasonably long time with a life here. So 16 years times about 4 or 5 goes at it, I think we get. So we may as well make them all count. Hey, good to see you.
Yeah, Jack, really good to see you. And it was a privilege listening to the session before, also just with the sort of sage advice of Sienna and Ty. I think one thing, and just sort of hello from New York to everyone. One thing I just wanted to start with was just on the concept of imagination and a little bit about what that means to me, and something that really resonated. But I do truly believe that things are built twice, and they're built first in the mind and then in reality. So one thing that really sort of resonated with me was, the thought plus action creates change. And I think we truly need to structure, as adults, I love what you were saying about kids when they're young, this just happens naturally, but as adults, really finding time to, think of a different world and flex that imagination muscle, as you said.
Yeah, I was just going to keep listening to you. It was nothing but wisdom. So yeah, I agree with you, man. It's a flexing the muscle, like thinking that we don't have to give up on these things is really important. I think we've got Diego there with us. Diego, are you there?
Yeah, I am. How are you, Jack?
Yeah, good. Great to see you. Hey, I'd love to just get your top level sense as to what's brought you into this world, and what you're sort of seeing.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was obviously I'd heard about AIM while I was at university. I went to Sydney Uni I did 2 degrees while I was there. But for me, it was, I guess, the idea that you guys are building, where it really is just about creating a platform that gives everybody equal opportunity. Whilst you're at university, it's great and you get a lot of learnings, but you do definitely see that disparity, I guess, in learning, where people are getting these opportunities to learn, and even though the system might not be perfect, but it's definitely serving them better than other people. So I guess hearing from a system that is willing to completely shake that up and say, how can we help those that are not being helped, and give that privilege from those who do have it and have been lucky enough to receive that education? How do we let that trickle down and become sort of like a waterfall where we pass on that knowledge and just keep on building the knowledge, because it should never be privatized. It should be something that everybody has access to.
Yeah, I think the part of this experiment, which I'm fascinated to see unfold, is it's back to sort of what Shalon was talking to and Trina at the start of the show, is really betting on human initiative and ability and potential. That if we actually get out of the way, and part of the paradigm in universities at the moment is this teacher lecturer knowledge. You take it on, it's quite passive. And I often thought when I was on university campuses, whoa, what a workforce. Imagine if you could get these guys all activated, if every university student went and mentored some kids, or every university student had a project to, pointy tip, eradicate educational inequity. And let's say we get that done in a decade. And then every university student has a challenge to work on planting 1,000 trees while you're doing your degree. And we can just, things that are small, but I believe that I think a university experience, which is about, the origins of the word is from this Greek word, a Latin word, universitas, which means the whole world, the whole thought. And I think we miss that wholeness when we don't think about service, and when we don't think about how we get out with our agency and we serve humanity. When we do that, I think we get a much more holistic education.
Yeah, absolutely. I would have to agree. You know, I had the luck of going to a school that had a very similar, I guess, ideology, in the sense that they felt that service had to be part of your education, and that whilst you were lucky enough to be, you know, educated in a particular way, that's only a small idea of what we actually consider to be education. You know, like your culture, the people around you, the country that you live in, and your experiences, they're all education in a way, and it's a different type of knowledge. So I completely agree. I think that this idea of a lecturer kind of standing there and speaking at people for 2 hours, whilst that's something that we've abided by as a way to pass knowledge on for a long while, there's also all these other systems that allow us to really provide this information in I guess, a much wider sense, and gives everybody that base where we can all work together to start creating a new system that not only services people better, but also, I guess, leverages all that knowledge that we have within ourselves.
And let's not dumb it down. Like, man, we dumb it down for ourselves sometimes. Like, I've been fascinated in the process of just within our little orbit of Amesland, sort of scaling it at different places. And in the Australian context, it was always, and I think maybe it's just part of what we've designed over time, but this sense of, okay, what's the extra explanation? What's the extra manual? What's this? What's this? What's this? How are we going to measure the outcomes? How are we going to get blah, blah, blah? And then we've got, like, at some of our team, we started 4 years ago in the continent of Africa, and we didn't quite know what we were meant to, what was our special sauce yet. And that's part of what I think we've cracked in the last 4 years, plus the 12 years before, is we know we're about imagination, mentoring, organizing change, flipping the script, building bridges, and hoodie economics. We know those knowledge fields. We've got something to say in those areas, and we can build together a social network. But I've been fascinated watching, like, our team, one of our organizers on the ground in Zimbabwe will just get the challenge, and the challenge will literally be dropped into, like, Slack from a message being, hey, let's get some Year 12 kids to deliver graduation speeches, and let's get some young people to enroll in Imagination University. Case closed. That's it. And Saru goes out and gets people, and we don't waste all of this time overthinking it, and we can get so much in our head that we forget to act. And I think that's part of the tension, is what we're trying to help build, is just this agency of learning by getting out there and doing. And Nick, there's no way you start something without just doing it, and then you're like, all right, I'm drafting, let's go.
Yep, I totally agree, and I think you guys have just made some sort of brilliant little points. And I think, Diego, you just said, in terms of the ability to democratize knowledge and just remove this sort of elitist element to it. And I think, you know, if we can also change, what are the motivations to learn? Like, I think if we're going there to just get a piece of paper and the certificate, I think it's the wrong motivation. I think there's an ability to really want to learn, to actually gain knowledge. And the beautiful thing about knowledge and experience is that it's cumulative. It's something that stays with you for life. We shouldn't be cramming for university exams to get a pass mark. We should be really learning to learn, and then using that knowledge, using that experience over time to make real change. And I think, Jack, you made the point before where small actions can make a big difference. And I think we spend a lot of time complaining about, you know, the government's not doing this, the government's not doing that. I think there's an ability now in the information age and the way that we're all socially connected to really create grassroots change. If you really want to create change, find your people. I think we can do some amazing things rather than relying on others, and take ownership and take some, take the initiative to really drive change from grassroots elements. But yeah, all good points from everyone here.
Yeah, the part around knowledge and degrees, we've been, as we're in parallel, sort of chasing this deadline of February 1 when the university opens, and we do 5 2-hour courses, and then people go out for 10 months and do their different elements of their degrees. So we've got school students who are doing entrepreneurship projects, university students, potentially someone like Sienna who's running a student chapter and organising 100 mentors to go work with kids. We've got teachers teaching with imagination, executives levelling the playing field and working out what they're going to do to bring more diversity into the boardroom and leadership, and then citizens doing their projects for change. And we've been working on this question around incentive. And I've always hated external incentives. I've hated them. I just really always want to go to the intrinsic core and people's worth, and try and always expect the best in people. But part of it, like just for motivation and memory and project management, sometimes incentives are helpful just to go, oh, actually, I have to jump on that call, or I have to do this. So I've got that. It allows us to just keep a design flow in as we sort of produce things. But we were talking today about, and one of the challenges with creating change is is you're often bending or pressing into some pressure points around established laws, established behaviours, established protocol. So we've had some pushback in some arenas around whether we could use the term university and whether we can use the term degrees. And I fundamentally think that, you know, a pursuit of higher order thinking where people are going out to serve humanity, to try and eradicate educational inequity, that's open for 5-year-olds to 105-year-olds, that is as valuable as any degree on planet Earth. And the degrees, what we say is valuable in a degree, to your point, Nick, I think we can have lots of complexity. I love the F. Scott Fitzgerald line that the definition of intelligence is holding two conflicting thoughts at the same time and still functioning. So you can have an arts degree that's valuable, and you can have an imagination university degree that's valuable. And heck, I hope there's, you know, with what Al Gore's doing, I hope they can turn that into a university, and the climate organizers can get their own degrees in climate organizing, because what we're then saying in a broader economic model is things are more valuable than just theoretical knowledge. Service, kindness, time, change, equality, these values are important. And I think if we can lift what we think is the highest possible institution of thinking, and we open up a little bit more complexity across the higher order, higher education system, we have a chance to start to shift economic modelling. And that's what we're really trying to push into from this, this project.
No, I think that's, I think that the way that you just kind of phrased it, Jack, was absolutely that. Like there, you know, one degree doesn't have to take away from the other, right? Just because you've obtained a degree from one institution that touts themselves to teach this type of university, that doesn't mean that there isn't another university style that also can provide you with knowledge from a different, you know, from a different aspect or a different angle that can actually make you, I guess, more knowledgeable, more well-rounded as a person. I think that's part of it, right? Like, since we've privatized education, a lot of it is to protect what that privatization did. So they don't want to call it something else. They don't want to call it a university or degree, but it really is just the passing on of knowledge. That's a degree. You're gaining knowledge from people, and you're kind of accumulating it. So I think it's just a different way to think about it, but that is why it's a new model. And you guys have managed to kind of like use a system that was already there to come up with a clever system that allows for us to reach, you know, underprivileged and marginalized kids, that gives them that step up.
Yeah, and work in parallel, I kind of think a little bit about the evolution of universities. As you've got, I think as Plato and Socrates both established their own schools around 300 BC, and they was part of the beginning of Western democratic university thinking of this sort of higher order pursuit being passed on to students. You know, had their tools and their texts that they'd written, and we've gone, and along the way we had, Nick, to your point, I think it was the British said to the US, I can't believe you're going to higher order thinking, so universities open for the public. You're going to commercialize it. You guys are going to go to water because you are suddenly moving this away from the aristocracy. That we have to protect, you know, big thinkers. Really were sitting behind kings, queens, and in the palaces of the world, and they had afforded the luxury to think for mankind or for humankind. And then we go into this era of privatization of universities, of it being linked to money, and some places free universities. We've sort of opened and explored that. And lately, especially in the number of different countries, you have strong links between degree equals value if it gets job. Now, we miss something pretty big there, which is a power of inquisition, thinking, questioning, philosophical work, what Sienna was talking to around morality. And then we had MOOCs drop in, which are fascinating, because then it's like, here's all this information, here's all these free courses, here's all, you know, the equivalent knowledge that you would get in a university. And I think hopefully I think our role is to add some design edge to MOOCs, to kind of say, here's some knowledge in a specific field with a specific purpose. Here's a massive online open course, but here's also a social network, and here's a village, and here's some design principles, which takes some of the stuff that's worked along the way. So that's how I see us playing, and hopefully there'll be lots of other people that play in a similar ecosystem to what we've designed over time as well.
Yep, brilliant, Jack. And I'm excited to be part of IMAGI-NATION University. I'm excited to go back to school. I think we should all continue learning as a sort of lifelong pursuit. And also, you know, I'm looking forward to welcoming a co-CEO to our business at some point in time. You know, for anyone that's interested, we're actually building surf parks around the world. So it's essentially bringing the beach and the sport of surfing to everyone. We want surfing to be an inclusive sport. We want to have it to be available to people of all ages, all genders, all surfing abilities. And we're looking to deliver these parks in sort of more inland locations rather than the sort of more privileged areas of the coast. So we're very excited, and encourage anyone that wants to learn more about the sort of surf park industry and what we're doing and how we're going to make this a community asset, and how we've sort of imagined what is around this surfing lagoon, to get in touch.
Yeah, awesome, Nick. And hopefully the network, as we keep moving, gives you a chance to be designing around that, recruiting a co-CEO from the network. Maybe you got a youngster from Uganda who's suddenly the co-CEO with you, and that could be a fascinating design experiment and bring a bunch of new insights. And Diego, thank you for joining us and being a part of this conversation as we sort of dance around the ideas of Imagination. You're really pumped to see what we can all do together.
I love it. It's creative. Thanks, Jack.
An experience. So thank you very much, Jack.
Oh, good. See you, Nick. See you, Diego. We're going to go to a tune now. We recorded this with some youngsters from around the world. We try and do an anthem every year where we give the stage for kids to really have a powerful voice. And they took Sam Cooke's Change Is Going to Come song for a ride, and we're going to check that out. And then we're going to finish up with our last panel for today. And then tomorrow is our lucky last day on these live streams, as we've just kickstarted with trying to really practice what we preach with building this social network for good and getting out and having conversations with people daily, every single day. And hopefully for those of you watching, you've been able to get a sense of what are these tutorial rooms going to look like when you have an executive gathered with a school student organizer, gathered with a university student, with a teacher and with a citizen. And this is, I often reflect about how unsexy launching things are. Like, I'm literally standing in my garage and have been doing that daily for the last few days. And, our team are sitting in their respective homes and sort of, kind of pressing play on the live stream and doing, Bevis, you're doing a bit more technical stuff than that, I suppose. Cool. I think you're going to join us for a special conversation about all things tech and everything in between on the other side. So here's to the anthem, and then we're going to catch up with our final panel.
Jack, back to you in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5.
Naira, thank you for joining us to be a part of IMAGI-NATION TV and reflect on what we're doing. What's kind of grabbed your attention here? Tell us a little bit about yourself and yeah, what's sort of piqued your interest?
Hi, well, thanks for having me, first of all. And I guess the way I want to sort of start it off is just to say that, you know, for a long time, I've been looking for a place to see where I can fit my Naira-shaped piece of puzzle into the world. And I've come to realize just how important education is and how important it is for us to continue educating ourselves for the rest of our lives. I live by a certain principle, which is something really important that I've learned in life. And it is, you know, not to distrust or hate a person that has an idea, but perhaps to look at the idea itself and see exactly where it came from and understand why they have this idea. And perhaps even, find a way to accept this before sort of attacking it. And one of my favorite quotes is actually by George Bernard Shaw. And he says, you know, if I have an apple and you have an apple and we exchange apples, we both still each have an apple. But if I give you an idea and you give me an idea, then we then suddenly have two ideas. And I absolutely love that because what I'm trying to work on at the moment, and it's a hot topic at the moment, the climate change, the climate crisis, is that there's so many conflicting ideas about whether we should still continue certain fossil fuel industries and or transition to sustainable energy, which is where my idea is. And I'd like to do my part. I'm dedicating my life. I've changed my whole life for it, to do my part to help progress and transition the world to sustainable energy, but not forcefully, not by telling someone that their idea was wrong or that everything that we've done in the past was wrong, but actually to show you my idea and let you take my idea away with you and think about it, maybe ask me questions, consider it, and see if it would be something that could fit in the world along with an idea that used to exist or that can transition.
Yeah, you can have, I live down the south coast of New South Wales in Australia, and the region that we're in is often called the coal coast, like really in a celebratory fashion. And, you know, we see coal trains driving or flying past on the train tracks. And my partner has been working on how to take her agency as much as possible into the climate world and you know, really ramping that up in the last couple of years. And it's been thinking about this idea of how do we be friends? How do we, you know, celebrate? You know, we found out through her research that a lot of the miners down here fought for a lot of the big civil rights changes, and the union that was behind mining during the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s pushed a lot of big social change. They supported theatres to pop up. There's complexity. When we say coal sucks or coal doesn't suck, we hurt a lot of people who have more to their life than just the job, and often the jobs then allow education for the people that then come through and then say coal sucks. So just having a bit more complexity, I think, is definitely what we want to try and cultivate as well in this space, and give space for connections to potentially happen, where you put that dream up. And yesterday we had Daisy Jeffrey on the show, who's going to be part of the university, and maybe Daisy and you and my partner and some other people go, cool, let's build this. Let's work on how we build the ideas together so we're not so isolated in that work. Hey, Kripa, thank you for joining us. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what sort of interesting you in arriving in this world.
Hey, thanks for having me. My name is Kripa Sundar. I finished my PhD in educational psychology a few years ago, and I didn't get there because of a huge passion for education. Let me put that up front. How I did get there was I actually started off in investment banking and management consulting, right? And I had a client who, it was one of those clients where you knew you could give them the best perfect business plan and do all the cold calls. It's just not going to take off because you knew that the core offering's not adding value. And it was just one of those things that just kind of stayed on me to the extent where I was like, well, I don't want to do this. Like, you know, I don't want to help you sell something that's not adding value. But then the question then started to become, so how do we do it right? And that kind of took me down the PhD route. Right now, what I do is just basically stuff that makes me happy, which is completely centered around bringing people together for learning. And I don't mean just like in an academic setting, but even as home, like just last month, apparently already. Last month, I put out a book for little kids on learning, where we're not talking about, oh, here are these 5 strategies to learn, but taking a big picture approach, right? Thinking about what makes learning happen, and teaching kids that you're learning every day, everywhere. And when I saw like Aim's video and the amazing diary, Professor Hope's diary, I'm like, this is the place I should speak with. Like, this is incredible. So thanks for having me here.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It's and I think there's all of these little assumptions and habits that we've either inherited or just accepted as a norm, which can be really challenging unless we have a delicate way of walking into testing some of those things. I think we can test them and go, how do we bend that? Or how do we do something different? You're not bad. You know, you're not bad. You're not bad. You're not bad. Wait, let's just explore. And that's the art, I think, of what progress can kind of look like. I often think about, you know, the paradigm idea of teacher student is in part broken and in part awesome, because teachers do know some things. Like they've studied, they've worked on a discipline area, and to swing the pendulum all the other way, which is let young people decide what their education looks like. No, because you're young for a reason. You don't actually know some things. Like my 2.5-year-old daughter doesn't know that if she keeps climbing up and falling off things, she's going to seriously keep hurting herself. So you've got there's some theoretical stuff you can help with people from experience. And that's the art, that's the tension, I think, in the discipline of finding what you're both talking to. How do we find that dynamism so the puzzle pieces can fit? We had an amazing conversation on puzzle pieces yesterday, Nera, around a couple of days ago. And it was just saying, you don't have to completely understand me and I don't have to completely understand you, but the tiny little bit of the puzzle that goes together, if we could just build a little bit of a bridge there, we can still have a lot that we don't understand, but that little bit's tiny compared to the whole puzzle piece.
It's incredible just how, just how you can sort of find that connection. I actually have been studying for about 5 years and I'm about to graduate with my first degree finally. And the most interesting thing is that I've been studying a certain subject, but recently in the last 6 months, I've learned so much just by listening to people that have dedicated their personal time to subjects that they're really interested in. And that happens to be the economics at the moment, the markets, and the electric vehicle market as well. So I'm heavily invested in learning about what Tesla's doing, for example, in the world. I actually have in my possession a Tesla 3 performance, and my project as part of that is just getting as many bums in seats and having a conversation and telling them exactly what I've learned. And that's, I think, that face value and that word of mouth, I think, should be highly regarded, because as much as, you know, I appreciate everything that my teachers have taught me, this is the other side of it. This is that that sort of break in diversity when you have a conversation with someone and suddenly you actually learn something. And from that, I actually invested my own time looking at YouTube channels by just people like us that have invested their time listening to what they have to say, reading hundreds and hundreds of articles about renewable energy and the stock market and the electric vehicle transition. And I think that that's what that joint is. I think it's face value. I think it's making the commitment to listen to it, taking it away, asking questions on top of everything that we have learned as well from whatever sort of institution we've decided to go to.
Well, and the gnarly stat that my partner told me was a part of our trust in communication these days is we are more likely to listen to a family member or a friend on a topic than an expert, which then means we better become a lot more educated as citizens if we're going to have that level of responsibility. Or the other part we can do as citizens is just start creating more, because that's not a fixed statistic, that can change. Just start valuing experts more, which part of, I think, this current crisis we've been through has elevated the worth of expertise in specific fields as we move through.
I loved what both of you are bringing to the table about learning from each other and listening and having that conversation and doing our little bit. Like Nera, I really appreciate how you mentioned that sometimes it's the little pieces that you have to start working towards to understand a bigger piece, right? In my work, I try real hard to help educate parents. I try to be in the middle of the stakeholder group, right? So it's one thing to tell the kids, hey, this is how you're going to learn. It's another thing to tell teachers, hey, here are all of these instructional strategies that the research says is like awesome. And then I'm a parent too. and my kid comes with some questions and you're like, haha, the language I learned it with, the questions I know are very different from how your teacher is teaching it, right? But then so often we leave the parents out of that system. So like, even when I wrote the kids book, I had a few folks who were like, oh, why are you putting in a parent piece? Like, is it a kid's book or it's a parent book? Like, it's not separate. It's about having a conversation with that book, right? Like, you talk to the kid, you learn yourself, and you have that joy of learning. Talk about learning, where it's not like, oh, did you do your ABCs or did you do your 1, 2, 3? So,
well, the other design part, I reckon, which we can flex a little bit more, is the role of the mentor. And I think that the mentor can be the 21st century celebrity. I think that's a way that we can elevate the citizens' thirst and quest for knowledge. And one of the things that we've developed over the 16 years has been these pop-up imagination factories, where we bring the village into an environment where the kids are. And one of the modules we've created over that time is this thing called Failure Time, which is effectively a modern Acropolis, where you get to move through all of these different stations where people are delivering some sort of knowledge experience under the lens of failure. Now, the trick to it is we bring in power holders who would traditionally be on the other side of the kids, who would potentially be the local boss of the police, the head of the law enforcement, the head of media, who may be purporting and working on sort of perpetuating established stereotypes, and bring them in and say to the police officer, okay, instead of talking about police, why don't you just come up with something you want to teach a lesson in that you're passionate about? So suddenly the chief of police is teaching a guitar lesson for 15 kids under the lens of failure. What I think we've failed to do sometimes is for those people with power to have agency to cross the bridge. The other one is to activate the network of parents. We're just way too linear. So when you look at all of the established knowledge in a set of parents around a school, we should be trying to bring that village of parents into the school to run failure time activities on the last Friday afternoon of every month. And suddenly you have all of the other parents as well educating our students, who are doctors, lawyers, work as garbage people, work as gardeners, are unemployed, are Lyft drivers, are Uber drivers, are tech scientists, chefs, writers. And then you get this rich knowledge field, which is sitting there untapped, because we go teacher, student, one class, parent, student, home. And all of this knowledge is just sitting there waiting. So that's one of the design frames that we're getting our teachers to work on as they enroll in the university, that they set up a pop-up imagination factory on the last Friday afternoon of every month to activate parents to come in and put on a mentor hat and take off their parent hat and work sideways. And then to give people with power in the village the chance to come in. And no teacher wants to teach Friday afternoon from 2 to 3:30. So hopefully it'll be a nice design frame to just open it up and let the teacher sit back and facilitate the knowledge, which is as much of the challenge for the 21st century teacher as anything.
I think that's like an awesome way that you've sort of articulated that, because it goes back to sort of how I like to fundamentally sort of approach life. And you know, instead of having this like this one door and then another door on the other end, as soon as you bring these parents in, that sort of give them, I mean, from my parents, they would give a completely different you know, perspective on life, because they came from an incredibly different type of culture in Europe before we came here. And then, like I said, you know, you give an idea and you take an idea, you've got 2 ideas, but then the next time you meet someone, you've now got 2 ideas to give, and they might only have 1, but you've now walked away with 3. And that's why I think that, you know, word of mouth and face-to-face value is just so vital and so important, because that's how we actually progress those doors start to appear. Instead of just having 2, we now have 100, and it's fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, I could talk to you both for ages. I've loved this. Thanks so much for dropping in, and really excited to see what we might be able to do together with Imagination University as we one by one sort of bring together a really complex set of unlikely alliances. And that, as much as anything, is really exciting to work on. So thank you both for dropping in.
Thank you.
Oh, good. Hey, Bevis, how are you going? Man, we've just been going for this. This has been like, what was that one? An hour and a half? Well, and counting, hour 41 probably now. Have you had a good time sitting in, listening to all of it? Is there anything you took from today, anything that sort of stood out? Mm. Yeah, I thought it was really insightful, wasn't it? Hey, Bevis, do you want to take us out to the close and let everyone know when to watch us tomorrow? Oh, cool. So should I do, I'll go down, keep going.
We know what happened in 2020. So let's imagine 2021.
Let's imagine
what a free and just world looks like. Let's imagine
a university free for all,
with no paywalls to higher order thinking for anyone, anywhere.
Let's imagine
a social network for good.
A bridge for us to come together and redesign the way the world works.
Let's imagine what happens when we tell the kids at the back of the class,
we see you.
There is a generation of kids just like you.
Let's imagine school students, university students,
teachers, executives, citizens
coming together to work on a curriculum designed for a future that we hope to build. Now, imagine.
It's happening right here. And you're invited.
Welcome to Imagination University, brought to you by AIM, the Imagination Factory.
Applications are open now.
So one of the values for those of you still watching that we've got with imagination is this idea called yes and. So I was just testing in that last little bit what your own script would be if you were answering the questions that I was asking, if you were hypothetically Bevis, our tech guy who is doing the live stream, who we didn't realize that his video and audio wouldn't be playing to you, and that whose voice I was trying to give life to with the hand puppet. You've been watching Imagination University special on Imagination TV. We'll see you tomorrow, 12 noon, Australian Eastern Daylight Time was what Bevis might have said, or what you might have thought. See you tomorrow.